Let me ask you a simple question. What's been on your mind lately? It's a question we don't get asked often enough. We usually get, "How are you?" To which we reply, "I'm fine." But what's been on your mind? That question goes deeper. It invites honesty. It invites reflection. Let's take a moment and talk honestly, because I think this is something that hits home for all of us. What's been on your mind lately? Not just the surface stuff. Not just what am I having for dinner, or did I remember to reply to that message? I'm talking about the quiet thoughts that sit with you when no one else is around. The ones that play on repeat while you're driving, cooking, trying to fall asleep. The thoughts that shape how you see yourself, your life, and your future. See, your thoughts are powerful. More powerful than we often realize. What you consistently think about, those thoughts you let linger, they don't just stay in your head. They seep into your emotions. They influence your decisions, and they build the atmosphere you live in. And if we're not careful, our minds can start painting pictures of defeat before we ever even face the battle. You can't have a peaceful life if your mind is a storm. You can't walk in confidence if your thoughts are full of doubt. It's like trying to build a house on a shaky foundation. And so many people are doing exactly that. They're going through life frustrated, anxious, or even depressed, not realizing it's because of the unchecked thoughts running wild inside their own minds. Let me tell you something I learned the hard way. You become what you think. Not all at once, not overnight, but little by little, thought by thought. Think about it like seeds being planted. You water them with your attention, and whatever you water grows. If you constantly think about everything that could go wrong, guess what? You'll start living like the worst is always just around the corner. If your mind is constantly replaying your past mistakes, you'll stay stuck in shame even though God has already forgiven you. But if you start feeding your mind with hope, with truth, with what's possible, instead of what's broken, you begin to see life through a different lens. Thoughts are the beginning of everything. Before a decision is made, a thought comes first. Before an attitude is developed, a thought lays the groundwork. So if you want to change your life, don't start with your habits. Start with your thoughts. What are you telling yourself every day? I spent a lot of years letting toxic thoughts control me. I thought I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't worthy, that my past had permanently damaged me. And you know what happened? I lived like someone who believed those lies. I stayed insecure. I stayed angry. I stayed emotionally unstable because my thoughts were dragging me in the wrong direction, and I didn't even know it. So that's how sneaky it is. The wrong thoughts don't always show up screaming. Sometimes they whisper. They come dressed as truth, but they're really fear in disguise. They sound like you're always going to feel this way. People don't really care about you. You'll never change. And if you don't challenge those lies, if you just let them sit there, you start living as if they're true. So let me say this. You don't have to believe every thought that crosses your mind. Just because you thought it doesn't mean it's real. Just because you feel it doesn't mean it's final. You have the ability to pause, to examine, and to choose which thoughts you'll keep and which ones you'll throw out. Start asking yourself, is this thought helping me or hurting me? Is it moving me forward or holding me back? If it's not adding peace, strength, or truth to your life, then it doesn't deserve a place in your mind. It really is that simple. Not easy, but simple. And here's the good part. When you start getting your thoughts in order, everything else begins to shift. You stop reacting to every emotion. You stop carrying the weight of imagined disasters. You stop living in the past. Your mood lifts. Your relationships improve. Your faith strengthens. Why? Because now your mind is in alignment with the life you want to live. You can't stop every thought from coming, but you can decide what stays. That's where your power is. That's where your peace is. And that's how transformation begins. Not just by changing what's happening around you, but by changing what's happening in you. So I'll ask you again, what's been on your mind lately? Because your thoughts are not just visitors, they're builders. And they're either building a prison or building a future. Choose wisely. Now let's go a little deeper, because this is something I've had to practice over and over again in my own life. Just because a thought comes into your mind doesn't mean it belongs there. Let me say that again. Not every thought deserves a seat at the table. Some thoughts need to be shown the door before they ever get comfortable. But too many of us are letting harmful, toxic, and destructive thoughts sit down, make themselves at home, and then wondering why we're overwhelmed, discouraged, or stuck in the... It's kind of like inviting a bad guest into your house. You know the kind of guest I'm talking about. The one who shows up unannounced, brings nothing but negativity, and drains all your peace. You wouldn't let them stay long, right? So why do we let those kinds of thoughts live in our minds? Thoughts like, I'm not good enough. I'll never get through this. Everyone's doing better than me. No one really cares. I always mess things up. They sneak in. They sound familiar. And if we're not alert, we start believing them. But here's the thing. Those thoughts are lies. And when you agree with a lie, it starts shaping how you see everything else. It distorts your reality. It clouds your judgment. It keeps you from walking in the freedom and confidence you've been given. I had to learn to stop giving those kinds of thoughts authority. I had to stop allowing fear to sit where faith was supposed to be. I had to stop letting insecurity speak louder than truth. And that didn't happen overnight. It came from making a decision every single day to guard my mind, to stop being passive about my thought life and start being active, intentional, and alert. There's a battle going on in our minds, whether we realize it or not, and the enemy would love nothing more than for us to sit back and let every negative thought run wild without ever questioning it. But we're not called to be victims of our thoughts. We're called to take every thought captive and make it obedient to truth. Now, I know that might sound like a big job, and I'm not saying it's easy, but it is powerful. And it starts with awareness. You've got to recognize when a thought isn't from God, when it's not lining up with truth, when it's coming from fear, shame, or comparison, because those are usually the thoughts that hit us the hardest, aren't they? The ones that speak to our insecurities, the ones that replay our past mistakes, the ones that whisper things we wouldn't even say out loud. But here's the thing. You don't have to accept those thoughts. You can reject them. You can replace them. I'll tell you what I do. When a thought comes that tries to steal my peace or my joy, I pause and say, wait a minute. Where did that come from? Is this true? Is it helpful? Does it line up with what I believe? And if the answer is no, then I let it go. I don't argue with it. I don't entertain it. I don't invite it in for coffee. I let it go. Sometimes you got to talk back to those thoughts. You got to speak out loud if you need to. No, I am not a failure. No, I'm not forgotten. No, I'm not going backwards. I am growing. I am learning. I am moving forward. There is power in your words. especially when they're spoken against the lies that try to take root in your mind. And can I just say, don't let your feelings trick you into believing something that isn't true. Feelings are real, but they aren't always reliable. Sometimes your feelings are reacting to an old wound, not the current situation. Sometimes they're echoing a past voice that shouldn't have been trusted in the first place. So just because you feel like you're not enough doesn't mean you are not enough. Just because you feel like you've been forgotten doesn't mean you have been. We need to stop letting our emotions validate every thought. Instead, we have to learn to lead our thoughts. And that takes practice. It takes courage. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. And soon, you'll start noticing that some thoughts don't even stick around anymore. They show up, and you immediately recognize them for what they are, intruders. This is how we protect our peace. This is how we create space in our minds for joy, creativity, wisdom, and direction. Because as long as we are allowing fear, negativity, and condemnation to sit at the table, there's no room left for the thoughts that are going to build us up and move us forward. I want you to think about your own thought life right now. What have you been letting sit at the table too long? What thoughts have gotten too comfortable? It's time to check your guest list. It's time to clean house. You don't have to be rude about it, but you do need to be firm. Sorry, fear, you're not welcome here. Insecurity, your time is up. Shame, I've got no place for you anymore, because you were never meant to live your life dictated by toxic thinking. You were meant to live free, with a clear mind, a peaceful heart, and a confidence that isn't shaken by every doubt that tries to creep in. Not every thought deserves a seat at the table. Choose wisely. Let's talk about something that seems small on the surface, but it actually carries a huge impact. What you feed your mind. Because your mind, just like your body, needs to be nourished. And the kind of nourishment you're giving it, whether good or bad, is going to affect the way you think, the way you feel, and ultimately, the way you live. A lot of times we're walking around feeling drained, discouraged, anxious, or confused, and we don't even stop to ask ourselves, what have I been feeding my mind lately? We'll check the pantry to see what we're eating. We'll go over our schedule to see where our time is going. But we rarely pause to examine what we're constantly taking in through our eyes and ears. The conversations, the music, the shows, the social media, the news, the thoughts we dwell on in quiet moments. And here's the thing. Your mind is always listening. It doesn't take breaks. It doesn't say, oh, this doesn't matter, I won't absorb this. No, your mind is constantly soaking up whatever you give it. So if you feed it with negativity, don't be surprised when you start feeling negative. If you feed it fear, anxiety starts growing. If you constantly expose yourself to comparison, discontentment starts showing up. If you keep listening to voices that tear people down, guess what? You start being more critical of others and yourself. It's a direct connection. We live in a culture where we're bombarded with messages all day long. And not all of those messages are life-giving. Some of them are rooted in fear. Some are fueled by insecurity. Some are designed to distract you, to pull your focus away from what really matters. And if we're not being intentional about what we're feeding our minds, we can start to think thoughts that were never even ours to begin with. That's why I want to encourage you to pay attention to what you're allowing in. Not in a legalistic, rigid way, but with a heart of wisdom. If something is stealing your peace, making you doubt your worth, stirring up resentment, or leaving you feeling restless, maybe it's time to ask, why am I still listening to this? Maybe it's time to turn down the volume on some of those voices and start tuning into what brings truth, life, and clarity. You see, renewing your mind isn't just about pushing negative thoughts out. It's also about pulling the right thoughts in. You can't just stop thinking bad things and leave your mind empty. That's like turning off the stove but leaving the pot on it. You've got to replace those thoughts with something stronger, something better, something rooted in truth. For me, that means starting my day with intentional input. I don't just grab my phone and scroll the second I wake up. Because if you give your attention away before you've even given it to God, don't be surprised if your whole day feels off center. I make time to feed my mind with things that ground me, whether that's scripture, a devotional, or just some quiet time in prayer. It sets the tone. It sets the atmosphere. It reminds me who I am and what really matters. And it's not just about what you do first thing in the morning. It's about being consistent. Throughout the day, I ask myself, what am I listening to right now? What kind of energy is this bringing into my mind? What's it stirring up in me? Because even something as simple as a conversation can feed your mindset. If you're always talking with people who gossip, complain, or see the worst in everything, it's going to affect your spirit. You might not notice it at first, but give it time and you'll feel the difference. On the other hand, when you surround yourself with voices that lift you up, challenge you in healthy ways, speak hope and offer perspective, you start to feel stronger on the inside. You start to think more clearly. You start to dream bigger, love deeper, and live with more peace. That's the power of feeding your mind with the right things. Sometimes it's as simple as changing what you're watching. The kind of entertainment you consume matters. If you're constantly watching things that glorify chaos, violence, toxic relationships, or distorted values, it seeps in. And you may think, oh, it's just a show. I know it's not real. But your mind doesn't always make that distinction. It takes it in, processes it, and eventually it becomes part of the way you see the world. And let's not even get started on social media. You can be in a great mood, having a peaceful day, and one scroll can trigger insecurity, jealousy, or discontent. Suddenly you're questioning yourself, your life, your progress, not because something actually changed, but because you saw something and let it plant a seed in your mind. Be wise. Be selective. If what you're feeding on is robbing you of joy, you don't have to keep going back to the table. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. It's about creating a mental environment that aligns with where you want to go. And that starts with what you feed your mind every single day. So let me ask you again, what have you been feeding your mind lately? Has it been helping you grow, or has it been holding you back? Has it been building you up or tearing you down? Because whatever you put in consistently is going to come out eventually in your words, your choices, your relationships, and your future. You don't have to be a victim of what's around you. You have the power to choose what you consume, what you dwell on, what you believe. Choose wisely. Let's talk about where real lasting change actually begins. Because we all want to grow, right? We want to be better, stronger, wiser, more peaceful, more joyful. But if you're anything like I used to be, you might be trying to fix your life from the outside in. You think, if I just change this habit, if I just move to a new place, if I just get this relationship right or this job situation sorted out, then I'll be okay. But I'm here to tell you, real transformation doesn't start with what's going on around you. It starts with what's going on inside your mind. You can change jobs, change cities, even change relationships. But if your thinking stays the same, your life will eventually look the same. Because your thoughts create patterns. They shape your decisions. They set the tone for how you experience life. And until your mind is renewed, You'll keep finding yourself back in the same cycles, asking why nothing ever really changes. One of the most freeing truths I ever learned is that I don't have to keep thinking the way I've always thought. I don't have to let my past, my feelings, or even other people determine how I think. I can renew my mind. I can train it. I can redirect it. And when I do that, when I start replacing toxic, destructive, fearful thoughts with truth, everything else begins to shift. I want you to think about this. If your mind is filled with negativity, fear, and self-doubt, then that's the filter through which you're going to view everything. Someone gives you a compliment and you don't even believe them. An opportunity comes your way and you immediately think, I'm not qualified. You make a mistake and you spiral into shame. But when your mind is renewed, you respond differently. You see challenges as growth opportunities. You give yourself grace. You speak life over yourself. You don't just react, you respond with wisdom and clarity. That's what it means to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And let me say this too. Renewing your mind doesn't mean you never have a negative thought again. It means you become aware of those thoughts and you stop letting them run the show. You begin to notice when fear tries to creep in, and instead of agreeing with it, you challenge it. You speak the opposite. You stop letting every little worry hijack your peace. You stop living on autopilot and start living with intention. And this process, it takes time. You don't wake up one day and suddenly your mind is perfectly renewed and every thought is positive. No, it's daily. It's moment by moment. It's learning to pause and ask yourself, what am I thinking right now? And is it leading me toward the person I want to become? If the answer is no, then that's your cue to make a shift. Remember, when I first started paying attention to my thought life, I was shocked by how many negative things I was thinking without even realizing it. Things I would never say out loud to someone else, I was saying to myself. And for a while, it felt overwhelming. Like, how am I ever going to fix all of this? But I learned that you don't have to fix it all at once. You just have to start catching one thought at a time. Just like you wouldn't try to clean an entire messy house in one afternoon, you start with one room, one drawer, one corner. You don't need to know everything right away. You just need to be willing. Willing to be honest about the patterns that aren't serving you. Willing to let go of the beliefs that are holding you back. Willing to speak truth over yourself even when it doesn't feel true yet. Because that's what faith looks like. It's believing there's something better even before you fully see it. Sometimes we pray for God to change our situation, but what he really wants to do is change us first. He wants to give us new eyes to see the same situation differently. He wants to give us strength to walk through what we once thought would break us. But that starts in the mind. That starts when we stop seeing ourselves as stuck and start seeing ourselves as growing. And I want to remind you, growth doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels like being stretched. Sometimes it feels like letting go of old ways of thinking that feel familiar but are actually harmful. Sometimes it feels like being uncomfortable as you step into something new. But if you stay committed, if you keep renewing your mind with truth, it will start to feel normal. Peace will become your new default. Joy won't be a rare surprise. It'll become something you carry with you. That's what happens when your thoughts align with the truth of who you are and who you're becoming. The beautiful thing about the mind is that it can be renewed again and again. No matter how long you've been stuck in a certain way of thinking, you can change. Your mind is not fixed. It's flexible. It can grow. It can heal. It can be rewired. That's how powerful you are. You were created with the ability to think new thoughts, to see from a higher perspective, and to live in freedom not just in theory, but in everyday life. So if you've been wondering why you feel stuck, why you can't seem to get past a certain struggle or emotion, maybe the breakthrough you're looking for isn't out there somewhere. Maybe it's already within you. Maybe it starts with what you think and what you're willing to believe about yourself, your future, and your purpose. Lasting change doesn't begin with a new circumstance. It begins with a renewed mind. Choose wisely.